Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 88 Crime Cold Case Files podcast in collaboration with the Tucson Police Department. As every episode we've done, we have detectives from the Tucson Police Department. I appreciate the rawness of this thing. All right, I know the listeners and viewers at home, we just appreciate that. But we want to remind everybody, 88 Crime, it's anonymous. There's 3 ways to give tips. You can call 520-882-7463. There's no caller ID, no recorded calls. You can visit 88crime.org to give a tip anonymously. Or you can download the P3 Tips app. It's anonymous and free for iPhone and Android. Data charges may apply, though. And as always, we remind folks that there is a cash reward up to $2,500. Only 88 Crime tips are eligible for the reward. You have to remember that. You remain anonymous. Okay, gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Before we get started, I'd love if you would introduce yourselves for the listeners and viewers and listeners today. Thank you.
My name's David Miller, and I'm a detective in Tucson PD's cold case unit.
And I'm Scott Alskog. I am also a detective with the Tucson Police Department. I'm currently in our robbery assault unit, but I have previously been in our homicide unit.
Thank you. So we're talking about a more recent case today, as opposed to the other ones we've covered so far in the program. And let's talk about this incident. Let's talk about when it took place, where it took place, things that happened during the investigation, and where we are today. So whoever would like to jump in on that.
I'll go ahead and start. Scott was the original lead detective on the investigation, and about a year ago, it was transferred from the active homicide unit over to the cold case unit, where we've tried to further the investigation from that point. But I'll let Scott talk a little bit about some of the details.
Sure. So it happened back in July 8th of 2020. The incident itself happened just after midnight, and it was at 433 North Grande. It's an apartment complex right in the area of St. Mary's and Grande. An original 911 call came in. There was a shooting, and an individual was down in the parking lot. Both TFD and Tucson Police Department responded, and unfortunately, the victim succumbed to his injuries in the parking lot, and he was later identified as Danny Jackson. He was alone in the parking lot. At the time, there were no witnesses or no involved parties to the actual shooting itself. So since 2020, we've been trying to work this thing backwards to figure out exactly what happened.
And do we have any more information about Danny Jackson? I mean, was he a resident there? Was he frequenting the place? Was he visiting? Or what was going on at that time?
Yeah, Danny, he hails from California. That's where his family resides. And Danny, it appears, liked to travel. He has definite ties to the Phoenix area, but we're not sure what his ties to the Tucson area are and exactly where he was even staying within Tucson. I have no idea why he was at that apartment complex at the time of the shooting, and that's part of why we would be reaching out, is we just don't know a lot about his backstory, and we were hoping folks would be able to potentially recognize him. They recognize a name, a photograph, something like that, and they'll come forward with information about him, and any little bit could help us try to piece together a timeline, exactly what brought Danny to Tucson and ultimately what happened to him.
Okay. So to help the community with this, I think it's important that we cover the location and scene a little bit so those folks that live in the area can think about how it's set up and maybe if they were around or they had friends or family that were around in that part. So kind of just break down the location and the scene for us if you can.
Sure. It was that complex is located on the west side of Tucson, just west of I-10. So it's near Grande and St. Mary's. It's a fairly large complex that is adjacent to a business, which is to the north, that has, grocery stores, restaurants, a bank. So it's a fairly busy area. There's lots of pedestrian traffic to and from the complex to that business. The complex and business center are separated by a chain link fence, which has a few cutouts or openings that pedestrians use to get from one to the other. There's also Menlo Park, which is just to the south of the complex that gets a lot of foot traffic. And, there's through those cutouts, it's a pretty active area, and there are people that just mill about from the park as well.
Okay, and it's really cool. While you were discussing the scene, the producers in the back have been bringing up maps. So I'll go back to the first one if you can for the viewers on this one. So this is the complex, the area you were describing here. This is the first one that popped up. And then the next one we had was, I believe was Menlo Park. Right
Yes,
there.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have another map. So put the next one on and explain to us what this is showing here.
Excuse me. So this is a map that on the lower portion shows exactly where the complex is in relation to the roads. The image above that is what you would see, or at least a portion of what you would see of the complex if you were on North Grande facing west. And the initial image that you showed is an overhead view of the complex and the area of the openings in the fence.
Can you go back to that one? Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so this one?
Yeah. The openings are highlighted in red. At least I think they are.
I see a yellow and a red on there. Hey, can you guys expand that a little bit on the screen?
As usual, I messed up the little thing. At any rate.
They're going to expand it for you. Okay, so we have the yellow and the red, and then there's an arrow.
Yeah, so the red arrow points to an opening in the fence line.
Okay.
That is connected also to a pedestrian path that runs north and south, essentially from that business complex all the way down to the Menlo Park area. The red pin drop or symbol is roughly where Danny's body was located within the complex. And there's another red line, I believe, to the east that's another one of those path-throughs. And the yellow area is a location where several couches had been discarded, and a lot of people would hang out there during that, they would just hang out and do whatever. Some of Danny's personal items were located in the vicinity of that couch, and Scott can go into a couple more details about what witnesses after the fact can say about that
okay,
area.
yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so just to expound on what Dave's talking about, in the far northwest corner, that first yellow dot,
Can you pull that back up, please? Thanks.
that's going to be a very traveled area on foot. At the time of the incident, there was a pretty big mesquite tree there that probably offered some good shade, and this was the summer. A good place to hang out if you're outside and you want to be out of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
And I would guess that probably those couches, somebody had moved out of the complex and had left them by the dumpster, and then I think somebody just moved them back into that corner.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a pretty permanent cut through at the time, where it's pretty convenient for the residents of the complex to be able to just go to the Food City and the Family Dollar and the other businesses that are right there. The cut through just to the east was a little less permanent and a little more difficult to get through. It was basically somebody had cut the chain link fence and then just peeled it back. And so somebody pretty limber could get through there, but most of the foot traffic's going to be through the one that's a little further west. And you can see the dot where the remains of Danny was located. That's going to be on an east-west, basically the thoroughfare for the complex itself. And what happened is somebody was returning to their apartment. They saw him lying down in the roadway, and they weren't sure exactly what was going on. Maybe it's just somebody who's had a little bit too much to drink, something like that, just laying in the roadway. So they pulled in, and there was a security guard that was arriving at the complex, and it was one of those situations where the security guard wasn't there full time. He had different locations, and he would clock in at each of the different locations, like on a clock on his phone, punch in, okay, I'm at this complex, I'm going to do my rounds. And he was just arriving. They flagged him down. He went over and checked on Mr. Jackson, realized the gravity of the situation, and he was actually our 911 caller.
Okay.
he rendered aid, and then we arrived and, tried to render additional aid. TFD came, and unfortunately, Mr. Jackson succumbed to his injuries, and that's when it became a homicide investigation.
So what are some gaps you're looking to fill here and help you're looking from the community in particular?
Well, I'm jealous of Scott because he's much better at this than I am. So obviously, like Scott said at the beginning, trying to just get an idea of what Danny's day-to-day life was here in Tucson. He did have some contacts with people in various areas of Tucson, so we're not sure exactly how he ended up at this particular location, whether he knew somebody within the complex or things like that, or maybe it was close to where he needed services like medical care and things like that. So we're looking to talk to anyone that he may have been close to as far as where he had been staying on a permanent basis while he was in Tucson, and just get some of that information, whether he was having problems with anyone in particular, where he got his food. We are aware that he did do some shopping within that complex around the time of his homicide. So those are the things we're really trying to focus on. And it could be that maybe somebody recognizes Danny from a photo and can say, oh, I hung out with that dude. He was also with these people who may be his friends. Any vehicles he may have been associated to, things of that nature.
Okay. I want to, first off, ask if there's anything else you guys want to add to this case file that we're going to publish.
Yeah, I would just put out the request that, we're just looking for a starting point. Perhaps there was somebody in the complex that was afraid at the time, to say that they knew Danny or knew what was going on, or if there's somebody in the community in that area that was afraid, or for whatever reasons, they just didn't feel compelled to say anything at the time. 88 Crime is an excellent forum. It's not going to be directly to us. You can talk to just 88 Crime themselves and just call in and give us a starting point. And if you give us that information, we can start trying to work it backwards from there. And that's what we're really reaching out to try to do.
Right. You got anything?
Yeah. And it may not be information from the complex or an eyewitness or anything like that. It could be a place where Danny, again, was getting services, or he would go frequently and that person can say, oh, he's been with this person, or he provided his address as such and such when he was in, the office or the building. Even that stuff would be very helpful.
As always, if you have any information you'd like to relay through 88 Crime, there are 3 ways to do so. They are in the show text, so you can go that way. Again, we thank you so much for your help and your listenership with these, and we will be back with another one soon. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Tucson Police Department, thank you so much for your collaboration and your partnership on this project. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Discover the power of 88 Crime, where your anonymous tips are rewarded with cash. When you call in anonymously with the tip, you are given a code. With the code and a password, you can walk into a bank and redeem your reward anonymously. If your anonymous tip results in a felony arrest, you can claim up to $2,500 cash reward. Let's stop the silence on crime and strive for a safer community. For more information, please visit 88crime.org or call 88crime.